Everybody. So now I'm completely sharing my screen. So I am going to talk about fruit trees. How he said, I have my own company and it's Go With Nature. So you can look me up, and if any questions, you can email me at gowithnature@yahoo.com. So the first thing that I wanted to talk to you guys is about let me see. It's about young trees pruning. So the one thing that I'm trying to show here is right now is a good time for planting. Maybe we are getting some bare root trees, or maybe they're already potted. The whole idea of the young tree pruning is that the main goal is that we are working in our structure, meaning the main scaffolds, meaning the main branches, the forever branches, the branches that are going to be there for the long-term structure of the tree. So if I say main scaffolds, I am meaning the major branches. If I say structure, that is what I'm meaning as well. So I put it there. Usually with this one, we do only one pruning a year, and we do this pruning in winter. So right now is perfect time to do this. And the reason why we do that is because winter pruning invigorates the tree. So wherever the tree had all the energy that the tree had put into root systems, and in the bark, and they have little places that they store the energy, all that energy is gonna come out. If we prune it, it's gonna come out and make your tree grow stronger. So that's why in young trees, we do a lot of winter pruning. We only do one pruning a year. We don't do summer pruning or anything throughout the year. We let them be. Then we have a budget, the pruning budget. What do I mean with the pruning budget? With the pruning budget, what I mean is not how much money you have to pay the person, but it's how much you can take out of your tree, how much you are cutting out of your tree. So this is really important. And that's why I'm differentiating young trees versus older trees. And I'm talking about all trees, all fruit trees, but avocados and citrus. We are not talking about avocados and citrus in this situation. We are talking about the
Elizabeth, let me interrupt you just a second. Are we supposed to be seeing anything on the screen?
Yeah.
All we're seeing is that it says it's loading.
Oh. So you are not seeing anything?
There we go. There we go.
Did it load?
Well, it did for a moment. Now it's loading again.
Okay, so so then I'm gonna do the class like that, because for some reason my slides are not really going all the way. So okay, so these are the pruning in young trees. So what we want to do is when we have the bare roots, or we have like a young plant, we want to plant it. I put here my soil line is this brown thing that you see here. You want to put the you are going to look for, before you planting, or if you are putting any irrigation, you're going to look for the graft. Most of the fruit trees right now are grafted. So this is the graft. And you wanna, if you're planting your tree, you wanna put this section of the graft, the one with the little knobby thing, or maybe something that has a scar on it. You wanna put that section in the shady part of the area. So let's say in the north part of my house is in this side. So that is where I wanna put this section of the graft. That graft cannot be close to the soil, or on the soil, or under the soil. That graft, you don't want to put any mulch on top of that graft, any compost, anything actually. You don't want the water to be hitting that graft. So that is the one thing that is important about planting a young tree. especially fruit trees have that graft. So now we planted the tree, and I put 3 examples here of something that you can buy in the store. If I go to the store and I see these 3 plants, I will buy the first one and I will buy the third one. And the reason is the root system and the growth. So in this case, I have a nice root. In the first one, I have a nice root system, and I have a really strong growth, like the thickness of the branches. So when I say a strong branch, I'm looking at the thickness of the branch. In this case, the secondary has a little bit of the branching, but it's really little. And the trunk itself is really skinny. And the root system is a little bit skinny. So you can totally see how the relationship between the root system and the upper section of the tree. And then in this one, of course, this one is the best out of the tree because it has nice branching, it's strong or is growing up in a good way, and you have really nice root system. So that's one of the things that when I'm looking at a plant to buy, those are the things that I look at. If I can look at the root system, that's why I buy sometimes bare roots. I am looking at, if I can look at the root system, I am seeing that I want to have a lot of little and few thick ones. And if I'm looking at the top section, I want to look at the thickness of the branches and the trunk. So in this case, we are gonna do the winter. We are gonna do planting and winter pruning. So in this case, I will plant it like this. This will be the soil level, so it will look like that. If you have a golfer's problem, put the golfer basket. If I am planning to have this tree to be tall, you know, like 12 feet tall, I try to make my own golfer baskets that are kind of like 3 to 4 feet, all size, from the trunk to the outer sections, that they will be like 3 feet. So like that, my root system is really protected by golfers. We're having a lot of issues with golfers this year, the past year. So what I do if I'm gonna do the number 1. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna plant it, and then I am gonna do a strong reduction. So my pruning budget in young trees like this, which these are like, I'm gonna call the baby trees, because these are 1 to 3 years old. So those trees you can cut from 0 to 80%. I put 10 to 70 just in case that, you know, I have to be careful what I say to people. But you can go to cut nothing. For example, if I am using the second tree, I will just leave it there, and this year I will not cut anything. I will just plant it, let it see if I can get a better root system and a stronger growth, and then I will do my first winter pruning. So in this case, I'm gonna use the first example where I don't have no branches. So I'm gonna plant it, and then I am gonna cut it. I decided that this tree, for example, I am gonna keep it really small. It's gonna be like 5 feet tall. And I am gonna say that in this example, this tree is an apple. So then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna see where I'm gonna start my branching. And wherever you do that cut, your branches are gonna come out right from starting from that point and lower. So what I am gonna do is I'm gonna plant it, put water on it, and then do my first cut. So in this case, I'm gonna go find that graft, and then I'm gonna go 9 inches above, and then I'm gonna cut it right there. Cut right where the green is. So that is really important for you to have in mind. A lot of the times in the books, they say from the ground, cut 18 inches. Well, you know, sometimes the grafts are higher, and you don't want to cut too close to the graft, because when you cut too close to the graft, a lot of the times the graft start growing and take all the energy. So you want to have nice separation from the point that you're doing your first cut, and that your branches are going to grow to the graft. So I will say, in this case, I will do 9. So the other thing I try to put in here is my systems, my training systems. This is something that I use to try to make people understand what is division. I don't do it like the system needs to be an open center and it's always an open center and it's not so strict. I use them because it guides people to understand what is division and gets me to know what I need to do. So when I am selecting my training system, what I am trying to do is, okay, I'm going to try to see how high do you want your tree to be? If you say, well, I planted this tree and I want it to be, it can grow as much as it wants. Maybe my first growth shouldn't be so low. My first branches shouldn't be so low. It can be higher. If somebody tells me, well, you know what, I want the tree, but in the lawn, but I want to be able to go around with my lawnmower that is a car, and so I need to have those lower branches high enough that people can go under. So, for example, in that case, I will use the central leader system. In the central leader system, you have one trunk and your branches come out from there. Those are in the those are used usually, which is not only, but usually for apples and pears. But it's something that I had used for a lot of trees. The one thing with the central leader that you have to keep in mind is that the tree has the apical dominance. That means that a strong center high point, which will be here, that is it grows really strong. So if it's a plant that you want to grow strong, so that will be a good system to have. Then you have the open center system. The open center system are usually used for plants like the stone fruits. The stone fruits are the fruits that have that huge pit in the inside and the flash in the outside, like plums, peaches, nectarines. They grow really strong and they produce the fruit production is in the last year and current year. So you kind of want a strong growth in the tree. So a lot of the times they use this open center. However, saying that, in my experience, I actually had used open centers in apples and pears that I want to keep really small. Like the one example I gave you, about 4 or 5 feet tall, those I cannot use open centers because what with open center does is generate kind of like a multi-trunk. In the open center, there is another system that I didn't put here because this sometimes feels redundant, and is the delay open center. So everything that means is you have the same structure with like a V shape open up. The main branches are going up and out instead of one single trunk, but it's delayed because the trunk is higher. So the open center system, the main branches can start like a foot and a half or 2 feet from the ground up. And the delay open center, the branches will start maybe 5 feet or higher. So that is the only difference. That's why I didn't put it here. And then the espalier. The espalier, those are the most common ones, by the way. The espalier is something that I use for plants that I don't have a lot of space, but I still want to have some fruit, or I use it for a lot of things, but talking about fruit trees, I have few of them actually. And if you don't have to be, again, you can do a more relaxed espalier situation when you can have the thickness of the tree can be 2 feet, and it will produce a lot of fruit if you give it a little bit of thickness, but you still have it flat and you still have it small. So espaliers are really good. Espalier trees, the most common things and the ones that work the best are for apples and pears. The ones that I have trouble making a lot of fruit with the exfoliate is like, for example, with the citrus, like limes and like apricots, plums. Those are really difficult because you want to keep the tree small, but you have to prune it so much that you end up actually pruning a lot of that fruit and wood. So it is really important that if you are going to use an exfoliate, you know that you want to use something that has a that it doesn't grow so strong, so you can actually keep it short. So and then the last thing that people doesn't really like that much, but that is really important, is that we want to produce, we want to stop the tree from producing fruit for the first 2 years. So if you are planting something like this, like these 3 examples, the most probably you will not have fruit in this current year. So in 2003, if you just planted it, you may not have fruit on them, which is actually pretty good because the fruit can unbalance the weight. And then because the root system is so soft, they end up leaning over and not really growing straight up. So, and also putting energy in the fruit system. Right now we want all the energy to be in developing the structure. The second slide is, okay, so the second slide is like the first example of actually pruning something. So I am using the one slide I got, the one picture I got with the bare root and planting. So in this case, I'm not gonna go 9 inches above the ground and cut everything because I actually have nice branches here. So what do I mean with those nice branches? I have branches that space out at least 6 inches between them. That is really, really good. If I'm gonna keep, for example, this is an apple tree, I'm gonna keep it small, that is good. If this is a apricot, that is good. So we wanna keep those branches, spaced vertically and horizontally. Pretty much what I'm trying to say is we don't want 2 and 3 branches growing in one point. So in this case, this example, I am gonna cut it. I planted it today, let's say. I put it in the soil. My soil line is here. My graft is here. And I am gonna say, I'm gonna reduce it. This is gonna be an apple too, just because the picture is an apple. And I'm gonna cut it. And I am gonna select all these 4 branches. So this is the follow-up. So this is the pruning I did. So in this case, again, my budget. How much did I cut? I cut a good 80% of the tree. And this is okay because these are really young trees that we are trying to stimulate really strong growth. You don't want to do this with a 5-year-old tree or 6-year-old tree. That will generate another reaction that is actually not that great. So in this case, we say that we planted, well, actually not this year because for the example, I put different years here. So this is the first year of pruning in 2021. So I did that. So then this is the growth that it generated from there. I have, again, really a strong growth from it. And I cut it right here. And then I have few growth that is kind of like not growing that well. So what do I'm looking at the tree? Well, I'm going to select my structure. Remember, everything I'm doing is selecting my structure. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 branches that are helping me, that are going to be my structure. They have really nice angles. So you can see how they open up at 45. Maybe this is a little bit going too slow. This is the cut I did before. Look, the reduction. This is the cut, and now I have a branch going up, which is perfect. In the behind the tree, that is the cut I did before. So you remember I cut it here. So now this close-up show me where I cut it. I have some reaction going in the center again. That's one of the things about open centers, is that the tree wants to generate that center. So you are going to have growth next to it, close to it, or right at the point that you cut. So those are gonna be my branches. So in this case, I have my little picture here. I have my tree, and the branches I selected, the 1, 2, 3 are here marked with the tape. And this one, the tape, I cut out the tape of the picture because I needed a better close up. So this is my grow in the 2022 of this tree. So the green things that you see here is what I'm gonna cut this year, this winter. So this is the pruning I'm doing, the next picture. In the next picture, the arrows is showing where the cuts were done and the reduction I did. So in this case, now that the tree is gonna be, what, 3 years old? So I am not really cutting that strong. I am already setting up my structure. So what I did, if you can see, the main branches that I had selected to be my structure, I am not just letting them be, even though they have a good growth, I am not letting them be. Why? Because I am still stimulating the tree to get stronger and to grow longer. So the more that I cut, the more growth I'm gonna have. So those are gonna be right there, like kind of halfway. And now we have this one. This example is to show you that sometimes, like the branches, not all the time, they grow so nicely like these ones with the nice angles, open up, 45. Sometimes we have some that we have to stimulate in a different way. So this one is in the right place, but it's kind of growing really horizontal. At this point in our pruning, in our training on our tree, we don't want to have such a horizontal branching. Why? Because the weight of the fruit is gonna pull those branches down. That is why we are selecting 45. Sometimes we say 60, but we really want to do a 45 degree angle in growth. So what I did is in this one, I'm actually pruning it shorter. So when I cut, I cut to something. So I usually cut to a bud or to a branch. In this case, because I'm working with such a young trees, I am cutting to a bud. So in this case, I will cut here. I have this bud here that is an outward going bud. So that means this growth is gonna go like this, prune. So all are gonna be outward going bud. In this case, I am gonna go to a upper growing bud. So the bud will be here and the branch will start growing up. So one of the things that you have to keep in mind is where you do the cut is actually really important. So in this case, going back, in this case, I cut to an upper growing bud and my branch went like that. And in this case, I want it. So the buds are here. There is a bud here. If I cut to here, my branch is gonna go to one side. If I cut to here, this is an upward growing bud, so my bud will go outwards. So that is important for the training and the pruning of the young trees and the pruning of any tree. So now, in this case, I'm still working in young trees, and this has been here for 3 years. This is a plum. And in this case, I want to keep the plum small. I don't want my plum to grow too big. So maybe with the plums, because they grow so strong, I don't want to prune 70% if I'm trying to keep my plum small. I'm going to prune less in my budget. So I will go maybe with 40, 30. So in this case, what I am doing with my pruning, I am re-leathering. What is a re-leathering? I am cutting that apical dominance and I am generating a new leader. So when I am looking for so this is my my leader, the highest point in your tree. Usually it is the leader. So in this case, it's the strongest part. And in this case, I want to remove it for 2 reasons. I want to keep my tree small, and I see that this is leaning to the wrong side, and it has too many branches. So I am re-leathering, and I am thinning some of that structure that is already there. So from 10 branches, I'm going to 5. So the cyan color is my re-leathering. So here, I did the cut here, and this red is gonna be my leader. So this is the new leader, the red arrow. And then my oranges are the ones that I am keeping. So I'm keeping these 4 and I'm cutting the purple ones. I'm cutting the oranges, and that is the purple ones, all the way to the point of growth. So I am fully removing them. So that gives the strength of the tree. So doing those type of prunings when I am shortening the tree, what it does is all the energy that it was going to all these strong things are gonna be, and simplifying them, are gonna go to these other the branches that stay, and that is how you stimulate growth. I have here, for example, some of the trees that I actually don't have to, if I am keeping a tree small and I don't really want to stimulate a lot of growth. So what I do is I cut really little if I have good branches, but they are growing kind of like with a sharp angle. I can use spacers. So you can use any type of spacers. This is a spacer, something that open up that branch and give me the angle. So you can do that too. In this one, I will do 1 cut and leave all this little here because I'm trying to keep this tree small. So those are the things I try to do with pruning. In here, this is an example of a peach. Peaches are trees that grow really strong. And this is one of the examples of a peach that the client, you can see, has the space to grow a lot, like grow big trees. So what do? We actually, from this one, so we simplified it 50% because this is the 4th year of the tree and we are still growing the structure. So you generated a center here, we remove the center. So here is that arrow where the center was removed. I will have to go lower in the cut, but anyway. And then we just left 3 branches. So what the point of this, the pruning of this is actually generating 2-3 branches that are gonna produce a lot. So I need those branches to be strong. So for the first years of this tree, I want to remove every other single secondary branch, and I'm leaving just the main scaffolds. And that is something I do only when I want these trees to grow big with a lot of production pretty fast. If I go to my client and my client has just this 1 peach and it's not a rush and she doesn't want it to be tall, so I will just leave it like that and clear out the little things. So any questions from that part that we wanna, from pruning the young trees that we wanna clarify? So pruning the mature trees.
Elizabeth?
Yeah.
Yes, a question about pruning ultra dwarf trees in containers, 3 years old and younger. Is there a difference in how you would go about that?
Well, yes. I think that when they are in containers, so when we are looking at the branches, you guys remember that I say, look at the thickness. A lot of the times when they are in containers, so when I'm looking at the thickness, these two, the ones with the numbers that are my structure, my main scaffolds, those are kind of like a Sharpie thickness. Those are the branches I want to keep for my structure. A lot of the times in container, you are not going to have a lot of those thick branches to keep. So you're going to have a lot of like pencil thickness or less. So you are going to have to prune a little harder. And the reaction is not going to be as strong, and if they are in the soil. So pretty much what I'm trying to say is you're going to have a lot of these really smaller shoots. So you prune, you're going to do a lot of reduction. So pretty much what I did with this one, that I just cut it down. and not necessarily a lot of removing a lot of branches. You are going to keep as much branches as you can, giving a space to the branches to develop, you know, because if you have a really crowded tree, you don't really want that. But you may end up having a lot of reduction in your branches and not necessarily removing of the branches in a potted plant. And the reason is because they don't produce a lot of thick branches. They produce a lot of skinny branches. So when you reduce the branch, like in this case, what I did with this one, I reduce it, I generate another growth here. But at the same time, what I'm doing is I'm making this branch thicker. Well, I am not making the branch thicker. I am letting the tree get thicker and thicker in the branch. And the thicker the branch is, the more growth it's gonna have. So that is part of training the trees. One thing that I forgot to tell you in this example is when we prune the years, you know, in 2002, and then we have the 2001 pruning, and then we have the 2002 growing. One of the things that you can see is in this picture, you can totally see that now I am having some of those strong growth, but also I'm having some of that fruiting growth. So here it is, spurs. A spurs is where the fruit is gonna come. So in here we have a spurs that has developed really well, and here we have a flowering bud. So the difference between flowering buds are vegetative buds is that the flowering bud will produce the flower and the fruit, no? Then becomes the fruit, and then the vegetative bud, like this one, it will produce just growth. So in this case, I'm showing this picture because now one of the things that make people kind of like makes it really difficult is to know where the fruit is gonna be. What the fruit is gonna be, especially for example in apples and pears, is gonna be in the third year growth. So pretty much the wood, not the plant, the wood needs to be 3 years old. So in this case, if the plant was planted in 2001, so in 2000, pretty much this will be a 3-year-old wood. And so now you are gonna see growth there. So if you leave this branch here, in 2 years, this branch is gonna have some of these spurs here, and you don't wanna prune them. You actually want those spurs. So be aware of that. That will be the only difference of pruning a tree in a container. Is the reaction you're gonna have after is not gonna be as strong, and so you don't wanna prune really hard because you can actually stress your tree. So you're gonna be with shorten it. You're gonna make one more step. You shorten and then you shorten back, and then you wait for that reaction. It's slower. The process is slower. So pruning mature trees. So pruning mature trees, we have different goals. We do usually, like for example, for pears and apples, I prune 2 times a year. I do my winter pruning, which is now, and then I do a little bit of summer pruning to remove some of that really strong growth that is shedding the tree in the inside. You can do that. It's not necessary. It's good. And that happens, it's good to do it for really mature trees like this one that is like, you know, your trunk is already maybe 6 inches in diameter or something like that. So the pruning budget is smaller, of course, because you don't want to prune 50 or 70% of your tree. You're going to stress it and they are going to go into growing and not necessarily into producing. Also, how I say before, you have some areas where the fruit is going to be produced. So you want to be careful not to prune a lot of that. With this fruit tree pruning that I'm showing you here, if you do this every year and you look at the tree in this way, you don't have to be so concerned about where the fruit is, because you are doing all the steps to get the tree, to prune the tree that you're always going to have fruit no matter which tree it is. So I am not going to complicate you at this point with oh, the fruit is in this section or the fruit is in that section, because if you do these steps I'm giving you, you're always gonna have fruit, period. So the maintenance of the tree, in this case, I do maintenance tree, or the tree, wow, sorry. So what I mean with the maintenance tree, maintaining the tree size, is a lot of the times we want to keep them small. So I do my pruning every year. I do 25 to 30% of removal of the branches, no more than that, because if I go more than that, so that means I'm removing some of the fruits. And I'm going to keep my tree small. So why the budget is also important, because if you go really hard removing, pruning your tree, what you get is a stronger reaction. So you're going to have next year way bigger of a tree that you were expecting. So it's really important that you actually prune it every year, but just go little by little, and you are able to reduce it. What are the goals of pruning a mature tree? You want light to go through, you want air circulation, you want to strengthen the branches. So for example, if this branch is kind of like every year you have to prop it up, that means the branch is not strong enough to take the weight of the fruit, and we want to prune it to get that branch ready to produce. And what that means every time I cut, the branch goes longer, but also grows thicker, and that thickening of the branch is what makes the tree stronger to get the fruit. We want to balance the growth from the bottom sections and the bottom branches that are not so strong, that apical dominance that I talked before. We want to balance that, the apical dominance, the upper section and the lower section, and we want to, with the lower, we want to balance the growth of the tree. A lot of the times you're going to see that the growth of the trees and the top section, they have really strong shoots. We want to balance a little bit that. So we remove some of that and we left the other ones inside growth. So we're going to generate, renew the wood means you're going to generate new growth. And that new growth is going to be used to produce new fruit, so we can regenerate the growth. So with apples and pears, the spurs, the thing that produce the fruit, they have really long lasting spurs. In the apples, the pears, some of the cherry spurs, and the Japanese plums, these spurs, this part that produce the fruit, can produce for few years. The apples and the pears are the ones that produce the longest, can be like 8 to 10 years. In the plums and the apricots, it produces 1 to 2 years and it's done. So it's not that this one needs to be pruned harder, is that we need to leave some of these and create some of these. So renewal wood, this also gets kind of targeting. I would say like after 5 years, I do remove some of these spurs, and the new growth and the new spurs I'm producing will help the tree develop that new growth, and my fruit will be better in the younger spurs. So that's one of the things I do. So now, what are the steps? The steps are these ones. Remember what your goals were. So if my goal is always know what you want out of your tree. That's my first question that I always ask my clients. Why you think that the tree needs to be pruned? Oh, I want to reduce it. Oh, it's just too thick. Okay, so those are the goals. I need reduction and thickness. That's the goal of this tree. It can be a peach, it can be an apricot, it can be a fig, it can be a pomegranate. So the first step is you're going to cut your 3Ds, dead, disease, and damage. And why is your first step? Because one of the things I try to teach my people is be in touch with your tree. Learn to read your tree. Before I used to say, listen to your tree, but people was laughing at me. So now I say, learn to read your tree, which means cutting the dead, the disease, and the damage. You can tell things. Like I went yesterday, I was cutting a tree, an apple tree, and I was kind of like, my branches were okay. Why I have 4 broken branches, and I have to cut 4 of my major structure was broken. And I realized, maybe it was a pest. Maybe it was a raccoon that came and broke the branches, but it's important for me to kind of like keep in mind that I'm not just cutting. I am actually thinking in what I'm doing. So if I have a lot of, if I go and cut my tree this and cut half of the tree, what this is telling me? Well, this is telling me this tree is not too happy. This tree is stressed, this tree is having problem, this tree is sick. So I'm not gonna cut anything else if I cut 50% of my tree, just cutting those three things, death, damage, and disease. That is what I have to do this year, and I move on. My second, sorry. Sorry. My second step. So let's say that I cut my 3Ds and I was having some dead. I have some things that broke, so I cut my broke. I still have, it's still part of my budget to cut. The next step is I'm gonna look and identify my structure. So in this case, what I did is I put in orange what my structure is. So you can see how, and usually when you look at your structure, you don't go that far. I wanted to draw this to go far because this is the way I look at the plant, and it helps me to know what part I need to cut and how it's like flowing or growing in the tree. So I go from the bottom. When I'm looking at my structure, I start from the bottom. I say, okay, this one goes like that, it splits here and it splits here. I have a nice branching with three nice structure with 3 branches there. Perfect. I have a problem here, but it's okay. So now I go here and I go. So I go like that and identify, okay, well, in this will help me to know that this part was a water sprout I didn't take care of before, and it become and the whole tree, and it's being my leader. The apical dominance right now is this one, and so I need to see what I need to do. So I go like that with all the tree. Then the other thing I do is look at what is crossing. So I identify already cross here, and it cross here. Then I say, okay, now I'm gonna look from the bottom. I have not even climbed the tree or the ladder. From the bottom, now I say, okay, now I'm gonna look at my height and see if I can go with that height all around the tree. So I say, okay, this is my height. If I cut this point, okay, so let's say if this is the height I want, I can go all around the tree. And that's why I do my imaginary line and I see, okay, now I can cut everything. So I start with the problematic things about my crossing. So I have a structural things crossing, so I'm gonna cut. So these red ones is what I cut. So I cut this branch that is going up because why I selected the ones going up, I selected this one going up, I selected this one going up. I cut those two because I'm trying to reduce the tree. So I know that if I cut the ones that are growing up, I am reducing the apical dominance, and
Lost your audio. Can you all hear me at all? There you are.
yeah.
We lost the connection there. Let's take this opportunity, assuming that we're back, to take a few questions. It's 8 minutes to 11, so and we've had a ton of information here. Can you talk a little bit about trees that like to get bigger, like persimmons and figs, and how to deal with those? Do you handle them any differently?
No, I actually do the same, looking at the structure, seeing where the branches are, and the branches are that are strong, like these ones that are going up, I try to remove them. No, I do the same for every single tree. I will say looking at the structure is what it guides me to what is the things that I need to work on to reduce or to remove. Yeah.
Okay. Here's a good one, because probably most of us have over pruned a tree from time to time. This person says they over pruned an old pomegranate, and now she has about 25 shoots growing straight up. And the question is, it best to focus the 30% on dead, diseased, and suckers and crossing branches, or how do you deal with getting that back under control?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the one thing is, yes, your 30% budget is counting the dead, not the suckers, but counting the dead and every other cut that you do. And the reason for that is that when you cut to dead, when you're cutting the dead, you usually cut to a living tissue. So when that is happening, you are making an opening that and that the tree, if you are cutting a lot of it, the tree is gonna get really sensitive and it's just gonna grow into shooting even more. So the way I do with the trees, for example, plums and pomegranates, when they are cut really strong, they shoot out really strong. So one of the things I do is I try to do the 2 prunings a year. So in this case, I will say, try to reconnect with the structure of your plum, so of your pomegranate. So try to see what are the branches that you want to leave and what are the branches that you're going to cut, and cut some major ones. And you're going to, if you have one too many, so what you're going to do is you're going to remove some of them to the point of growth, and you are going to reduce some of them to something. And that ones that you reduce, next year you're going to cut. But for right now, if you cut everything back, all the strong ones back, you're going to have a lot of more shoots next year. And that's why it was that thing about balancing the growth of the tree. So one of the things I do is let's say that you have 10 of them that you want to cut. So I will remove 3, shorten the rest, and short them in different heights. So like that, what I'm doing with the tree is telling them, so if I have this and I shorten this one here, I shorten this one here, I shorten this one really close to where I'm gonna cut. And so what I'm telling the tree to do is the reaction is according with how far I went down. So if I come and cut all of this here, I'm gonna have a lot of shoots, and the tree is gonna take a lot of that energy into that. So by removing them in different heights and removing 3 only, after that strong pruning, I just remove 3 and I start wiggling down the other ones, is that I'm telling the tree not to keep reacting, slow down. And as soon as those slow down, I just come and cut them. And then I get little shoots out of that. So that's what I will do.
Elizabeth, I see there's a lot more to go through here, but I think we're going to have to schedule a part 2 for the advanced pruners in order to get there, because there are some more questions here that are pretty good relating to what we've learned so far. And several people have asked about citrus and whether they should be pruning citrus. I've written answers to a couple of people suggesting they wait until the chance of frost has passed, which is usually mid-February or later. What do you think about pruning citrus now?
Yeah, that is great. That is exactly what I do. And we are having a citrus seminar, first of all. And so go to the citrus seminar for citrus, because none of the things about the structure, yes, applies to citrus, but you don't, even if you plant a young tree, you don't want to do the young structural pruning I was mentioning at the beginning, this one, because this is for plants that are deciduous, meaning plants that lose their leaves in winter. Citrus, you don't want to do that. Avocados, you don't want to do that. For citrus, for citrus avocados, you want to wait until like March, depending where you are, Walnut Creek and stuff like that. But you want to wait till the end of March to do your pruning, or March, when it's not so cold. You can do your pruning and they are gonna still produce fruit and produce flowers. The one thing that people always say is like, oh, my Meyer lemon is always fruiting, is always flowering. Yes, they are always gonna do that. Oranges had more set times to do flowering and fruiting and everything, but in the sense of pruning, we are adjusting our time according with the weather and what can happen to the tree if you prune it at this time. If you prune it at this time, if it gets cold, you're gonna have frost, you're gonna have frostbite. So that means they're gonna have some dead sections in the parts that you did the cut. So you don't really want to prune right now.
Another couple of questions relate to pruning to give clearance. For instance, building clearance, or the tree is growing against a fence, and if you cut the tree back from the building for fire protection or many reasons, do you have to do something to the other side of the tree to balance that out?
Yes, I do. That's a good question. And the reason why I do, like, you don't have to be as strong as that side, but you want to cut the other side for two reasons. Weight. So if this part, if you're cutting a lot of this section and you leave a lot of length in this section, the weight of these branches can actually make the tree go like that. And a lot of these things are going to break. So what you want to do is you want to reduce some of those branches. The ones that are kind of like moving a lot, you can reduce those. If the ones are really strong and going up, so then you leave those. And you maybe do thinning on them. Thinning is maybe if you have 5 branches, you leave 3 and cut 2. That is thinning. But you want to reduce and remove some of the weight in the other side if you have to cut a lot in one section.
Excellent. Now, I really do think we're going to need to reschedule part 2 here. Part of it is that we're going to get into some details about where to cut and close-up pictures of branchlets and that sort of thing, which is wonderful and really important. But maybe we'll call this part 1 about dealing mostly with the younger trees and with structure, and then we'll call part 2 getting into the details for those who want the deeper dive into where to snip and where to snap and that sort of thing. And then I see from the slide that's on the screen there that there's some possible discussion of diseases and pests and remedies and that sort of thing. And this wasn't a class on how to plant a fruit tree, but there was a question about fertilizing at the time of planting, and the answer clearly is yes. That's the best time to get some fertilizer into the ground, although you want it to be probably an organic fertilizer that releases slowly, because especially with bare root trees, you don't want the roots coming in direct contact with a chemical fertilizer that could burn them. So I think we should probably just take a quick look here and see if there are some questions that I missed. Oh, there were a couple questions about espaliers and whether there is an issue there with, since an espaliered tree is usually planted against a wall or a fence or something like that, Is there an issue with the size of the root space that's there available for them? Is there something that should be done there? And I take that to mean maybe if there is a restriction in the root space, do you need to prune a little differently?
I would say if there is a restriction, so you want to make what you could do is move your tree, and if your tree moves and the soil goes like that, that means your root system is still having issues getting established and getting strong. So when you move your tree, if this is the tree, no, so then your tree moves like this. And so that means it's established. You don't have no problem. You can do the pruning. But if you go and move your tree and your tree moves with the soil, that means your tree is not established. And so that means that you need to, your root system needs to grow stronger to hold the tree. So in that case, you want to keep reducing your tree. One of the things that I have here is this product, the Help is really good for root production. So you could use a little bit of that in your soil as a fertilizer.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I will speak with Jen, the scheduler, and see if we can work out a part 2 on this, and hope everybody will be able to attend that. And please be sure to email us any comments, and to check out anything you missed on the webinar will be available to you on Tuesday when the video is posted, both on the sloatgardens.com website and on our YouTube channel, so that you can go back and check out the pictures again and the descriptions. And then I'll hope to see you on Wednesday evening for the wildflower seed starting and for our subsequent webinars as well. So thanks everyone for attending. Thanks Elizabeth for all the info, and a small apology at least for our numerous technical glitches here today. Not sure what that was about, but we'll work on it as best we can. So bye to everybody for now.
Bye. Thank you for coming. Email me.